Number 3. This happened to myself and a friend of mine. We're both 23-year-old males. We decided to go on a 2-night backpacking camping trip to the Adirondack Mountains of New York. We are both very comfortable with nature and spend a lot of time outside hunting, camping, and fishing. We hiked about 5 miles to get to a small lake so we could set up camp on the beach. We didn't really expect to run into anyone else. Our first night there, as we were sitting around the fire, we saw a flashlight moving on the other side of the lake around 10:30. This was fairly unusual. However, we did not think much of it. But as time went on, this flashlight kept moving around the lake, getting closer to our campsite. We kept discussing who could possibly be wandering around the woods in the middle of the night. We did not want to deal with any unwelcomed guests. Once it was clear that the person, or people, were heading for our campsite, we moved off into the nearby woods to see who wandered up. I took a small axe with me and my friend had a .22 rifle. Now we weren't expecting any trouble, and we certainly didn't want to make any, but we figured we might as well cover our bases. Now the moment of truth. The flashlight comes near the light of our fire, and it's one man. He has a beard and was probably in his mid-40s. The scary part was that he was carrying what turned out to be a pump-action shotgun. He walked around our campsite a few times, and then proceeded to enter our tent. After rummaging around for about a minute, he came out and started yelling,
"I know you're out there. Why don't you come and say hello?"
My friend and I remained motionless under a hemlock tree about 50 yards away. That's when the man proceeded to fire his shotgun into the woods, not too far from where we were. He also swung his flashlight around several times. After what felt like hours, he grabbed my friend's backpack and a few articles of clothing that we had drying near the fire and threw them in to burn. My friend had the .22 rifle trained at the man. He asked me if he should shoot. I told him absolutely not, unless he spots us and starts pointing the gun in our direction. Thankfully, the man moved off after a while. We waited until his flashlight was on the other side of the lake. Then we ran out and grabbed everything we could fit in my pack and took off. It was now 2 or 3 a.m. We ran out the trail with our flashlights and made it back to my car as the sun was coming up. We immediately went to the police department and reported it, where we also spoke with some forest rangers, and that was it. I still haven't heard anything back from the police, and this experience creeped the hell out of both of us. Number 2. Female point of view. A little backstory. This happened a few years ago when I was about 13. My best friend and I were at a lake in the middle of Georgia, trying to fight the almost 125 degrees Fahrenheit weather, when we decided to swim to our secret spot. It was really a sort of cave made out of fallen tree roots. We did the routine snake check and swam in, climbing onto a rock inside. We started talking and gossiping, and all was normal until about 45 minutes later, when we heard a truck pull up and the sound of someone getting out. We guessed it was some people fishing, since the lake was full of bass and other big fish. We started whispering, hoping the person wouldn't find our hiding spot, when we heard the splash of someone getting into the water. We brushed it off at first, until we saw a man, about 50 to 60 years old, swim into our spot. We both looked at each other, but didn't move. We were frozen with fear. He then came closer and started treading water about 3 feet away from the edge of the rock. He asked us our names, and we both replied with fake ones because we weren't entirely stupid. He told us that they were very pretty names, and then, in the creepiest voice I've ever heard, he looks both of us up and down and whispers,
"You both are very beautiful young ladies. Someone like me could easily take advantage of you."
He then climbed up onto the rock. That's when we noticed that he was completely naked, and we scream. He then lunges at us, and we both dive away into the water. He manages to grab a hold of my friend's bikini top and rips it off as she dives in. We both are fairly fast swimmers, and we hightailed it back to my friend's mom and explained what happened. While we were explaining, the man swam up and walked towards us until he saw my friend's mom. He then quickly ran into the bushes and out of sight. His truck drove by us a few minutes later, but we couldn't get a good look at his tag numbers. We called the cops, but as far as I know, he was never caught, and I haven't heard anything about it since. I've moved across country, but this experience will likely never leave my mind. Number 1. About 4 years ago, I was walking my dog around 9 or 10 p.m. It was the middle of the summer, and the only time I could walk her was at night, so she wouldn't get too hot. My town is a very small suburb where nothing ever happens and people are mostly friendly. I rarely ever saw anyone else when I was walking at night. In my town, there's a small lake surrounded by woods. There's a path that goes around through the woods to lead around to one side of the lake. It brings you out to a big clearing on the other side that's used as a park. And there's also lights that come on at night. You can see this clearing from the other side of the lake when you first enter the woods. My dog loved to walk that path, so I decided to take her there. When we get to the opening of the woods, where the path begins, my dog stops dead in her tracks. I tug on her leash and tell her to come on, but she won't move. She wasn't sniffing anything. She just stood there staring into the woods and looked scared, with her ears back and her tail down. She did tend to get scared of little things, so I figure she just heard a noise or something and was overreacting. I kept trying to get her to come along. She glances at me when I call her, but for the most part she remains frozen. Finally, I get her to go forward a few steps, very slowly. So we are now a couple of feet from the entrance of the woods. Suddenly she stops again. Now I'm starting to get a little annoyed with her. I look at her and tell her to come on, and see that she's now looking out towards the lake, again looking very frightened. I follow her eyes to see what she's staring at. In the clearing on the other side, I can see a figure sitting on top of one of the picnic tables. It's not unusual to see other people at the lake, although I've never seen anyone out there at night. The person I can see is dressed in all black, hood up, with his back to us. I'm fairly certain it's a man. I get kind of nervous, but I don't see it as a big deal. It isn't that late, and other people like being out at night too. My dog was always very friendly and was never afraid of people, so I'm wondering what's freaking her out so bad. I decide to keep walking through the woods and then cut through a little area just a ways ahead where the trees aren't very dense so I can go home. I call my dog quietly, and she moves a few more feet, so we're now in the middle of the clearing. It's pretty dark where we are, just a street lamp behind us adding some dim light. My dog stops again and looks back towards the man, and then quickly turns around and starts pulling to go back in the direction we came from. She is very freaked out, tail tucked between her legs, ears back, and panting. I look back to the other side of the lake. The man is now facing me. He still has his hood up, but I can see his face, and he seems to be looking right at me. I look at him for a few seconds, and then getting scared, I turn back to leave the woods the way we came from. My dog is pulling me so hard, I can barely hang on to the leash. She keeps trotting ahead of me until we're about a block away from the woods. Then she finally slows down. We keep going for a few more minutes, when suddenly she gets that same panicked look on her face, and turns and yanks me down a side street that's a shortcut to my house, going as fast as she can on the leash. I get an uneasy feeling and I look back. The hooded man dressed in all black was on the street we had just came from, watching us. He was just standing there on the street corner, with his hands in his pockets, almost casually, and he seemed to be slightly smiling. I turn around and I don't look back, and start jogging towards my house with my dog. I let her leash go as soon as we got to the driveway, and she takes off running to the backyard. I still walk my dog at night after that, but I never took her back to the lake, except during the day. I had nightmares about that man for a while. It always unnerved me how quickly he caught up to us. There are a few shortcuts he could have taken to get to the other side of the lake without going all around the path. He had to have been running after us to make that time, and I've never seen my dog so scared of a person than I did that night.
There's always a reason to be afraid.